We're going to go through a banded hip axial rotation using the 90-90 position. So for this, you're going to need a band and a bit of floor space, something that you can attach the band that won't move. So this band will go through my leg onto my knee, and then I'll take that 90-90 position, okay? So from here, I've got 90 degrees at my knee, at the hip, and then at this knee joint. Now, this will be my working leg, the rear leg. So this doesn't really matter, this front leg. If this is an uncomfortable position to be in, for example, then take this leg out of the equation. Close the knee a little bit maybe, move that knee up and down. See where comfort comes from adjusting this front leg. Again, upright on my arms, for example, and the more upright I become, generally the more I close this hip joint. So this will make the task a little bit more challenging. So if you find being upright, say here, is difficult, by regressing onto, say, your hand, taking it further away, regressing down onto your forearm even, this will give you a bit more space to perform the exercise. So those are a few variables that you can already start to explore. Now the exercise will be to externally rotate the hip, okay, and then internally rotate the hip, fighting for more in both end ranges, assessing how it feels with a bit of tension on the band. If it's not that challenging and I want more tension, I can then opt to move away to create more tension on the band. So currently, I'm having to resist the band quite a bit as I go into internal rotation for this hip, and then I'm having to control the way back nice and slow as I feel the band still create a bit of a pulling force on my hip. And then I can get very specific, so I can angle myself in specific angles to change how that line of tension feels. To change that line of tension on how it feels as I go through that movement. Again, another modification that you can make with this back leg is I demonstrated everything pretty much keeping 90 degrees at this knee joint and the same movement pattern, but you don't have to follow with that. You can play with potentially closing the knee angle a little bit more, seeing how that feels as you perform the exercise. This knee can move in a little bit even, and you can try here. Generally speaking, moving the knee inwards a little bit, closing the knee joint a little bit, being as well on your forearm makes this exercise a lot more achievable for a lot of people that have difficulty rotating through their hips. So this is with the band pulling and creating a resistance this way. And then another variation that we can play with this setup is to turn ourselves away. So this time I'm facing the band, so I'm going to attach the band through the same leg, okay? And then I'm setting this leg up behind me. So then from here it's the same exercise. You have all those variables to explore. You externally rotate the hip. This time more tension is happening as I'm trying to externally rotate the hip. Tension eases off the band as I'm internally rotating. Still, I feel it's a bit of a challenge, especially if you get a good amount of tension on this band, working both ways. So on the way back, I want to make sure that I keep control on that internal rotation. I'm not letting the band pull me along for the ride, okay? So factor that in, bear that in mind as you perform this exercise. Even though you're working against the band, make sure that you're managing to maintain control through rotation internally and externally, and you're keeping tension in that joint as you perform this exercise.